Very proud to be continuing the journey with this video sponsor, Squarespace. They just re-signed for the 7th year running, making them our longest running and most supportive partner. They help me do what I do, just like their website creation tools help millions of people start new careers, build new businesses, or just get things done. They're offering a special discount to viewers of this channel, so stick around to the end of the video to learn more. Okay, Crimson Desert, here we go. So the hype for this game is absolutely insane, and I think that might come as a surprise to at least a few of you. Like, if you're already dialed into this thing, you'd know that that hype is out there, but if you're not, you might be like, wait, this is the first time I'm hearing about this game. And I think there are some reasons that this is sitting in a few people's blind spots. Number one, it comes from Pearl Abyss, who are a Korean studio that have never made a game intended for a Western console audience. Their main thing before this was Black Desert Online, the archetypical Korean MMO with all the visual style and grind that comes with that. Secondly, this game doesn't neatly fit into any typical genre bucket, and so I'm sure that more than a few people looked at it and thought, I don't know what the fuck that is, I guess it's not for me. But whether you're already on the hype train or you're just seeing this game for the very first time, there's probably one question that's dominating your thoughts. Is this game real? Can you really fly a dragon and a mech? Can a game really be this big and look this good? Sure, the combat looks flashy, but does it actually play well? Is this Zelda Sky Isle stuff that they got going on here just a lazy copy and paste of a world design element, or does it actually fit here, and is it additive to the experience in some way? And look, presupposing that this game is real, the more important question naturally follows, is it good, or is it simply too good to be true? Well, I played roughly 6 hours of this game recently at an event hosted by Pearl Abyss, and I can tell you that after that length of time playing the game, I'm definitely able to answer one of those questions, but I'm not quite yet ready to answer the second. I can tell you that this game is definitely real, 100%. You see these visuals? This is running at 1440p max settings on an AMD RX 9070, and it's running super smooth, like absolutely incredible, and it's delivering some truly absurd draw distances and lighting and weather effects. Technically, this is the sort of game where I wouldn't believe it until I'd actually played it for myself, and now that I've actually played it, I still can barely believe it, but it's real, it definitely is. From a gameplay perspective, everything you've seen is 100% real as well. The combat has a lot of input depth that essentially makes it an open world character action game. There really is a summonable dragon to fly and a mech to drive, and I can confirm that because I flew it and I drove it. There really is a physics-based approach to puzzle solving that asks you to move and break things to creatively solve puzzles. There really is a massive world made up of 5 distinct biomes, each of them with their own part to play in your grand adventure. The list goes on and on. Nothing that Pearl Abyss has shown you in their cinematic or gameplay trailers has been faked. In fact, I'd say they've been holding back, and the real game has even more surprises in store. So as for that second question, is it good? Why can't I answer that after 6 hours of playtime? Surely that's enough time to get some sense, right? Well, here's the thing. The preview was broken up into 2 blocks. About 4 hours spent with the game's introduction, and then 2 hours spent with the game's endgame state, where I had a fully leveled up character, and I could go anywhere, do anything, fight some endgame bosses, etc. That second half showed me the potential of this game. The boss encounters were fantastic, and the freedom to go anywhere was liberating, and the moment-to-moment combat of a fully upgraded, fully geared character was exhilarating. I got to experience the unlock sandbox in a game that is very sandbox-driven, and it was great, and it made me really excited for Crimson Desert. And I desperately needed that injection of excitement because the first couple of hours that I played with this game weren't great. They just weren't, but you've got to understand why. Crimson Desert is one of the most systems-heavy action games I've ever played, with possibly the most complex control scheme I've ever experienced in an action game that naturally creates a gigantic learning curve as you are constantly being introduced to new systems and new abilities and new control scheme elements for 4 hours straight. It's impossible to hold it all in your head, and so that creates a lot of frustration early on. But coupled with that is the fact that many of the things that the game wants you to do in that opening window are really poorly explained, either because they expect you to remember everything you've already been told, when that's basically impossible, or because the objectives themselves are just unclear. I'll put it this way. I did this preview with a number of other media and content creators, and there were Pearl Abyss staff hovering around us to help us out when we got stuck. They constantly had to stand over people's shoulders pointing out the solutions to problems so that we could keep progressing, and I was watching people around the room getting stuck on the exact same shit that I was getting stuck on because, like I said, it just was poorly explained. So that's painful, sure, but this game is so ambitious with everything that it's aiming for, I think it would be really unfair to judge it on the basis of a poor onboarding experience. The voice acting is superb. The visuals are absurd. The scope is gigantic, the combat is rich, the breadth of the gameplay on offer from puzzle solving to exploration to crafting is vast. There's just so much here, and above all else, I hope you take this away from my preview. I actually have a gut feeling that this is going to be pretty great. Weird and janky and uneven, but ultimately great, as I kept seeing flashes of brilliance as I was playing, and I kept dreaming of the moment when the tutorializing would end, and the control scheme would be firmly committed to muscle memory, and at that point I could just begin truly experiencing what Crimson Desert has to offer. I wasn't able to get to that point during this preview, but I don't think that's a cause for concern, in the sense that some games just take a while to warm up. This is definitely one of them, and despite its very slow and sometimes painful start, I walked out of this preview extremely excited to play more, and ultimately optimistic about what Crimson Desert might end up being.
She'd only run ragged if she could.
Typically, I like to break up most of my videos into discrete buckets like story, visuals, gameplay, etc. But for the purposes of this, I think it's better for me to walk through my preview experience sequentially, because I think it's a better way to show you the highs and lows of what this is all about. Okay, so Crimson Desert begins rather suddenly. You click the start button and then you're Cliff. Standing there in the dead of night with a torchlit camp in front of you. Cliff is the game's fully voiced protagonist, by the way, and there's no character creation. Later on, you'll actually unlock other playable characters with their own storylines and combat styles and itemization, but even then it does appear as though Cliff remains the main protagonist throughout the entire game. As soon as you load in, you'll probably be thinking to yourself, holy shit, this game looks really good, and you'd be right. Crimson Desert is running on Pearl Abyss's proprietary engine that they call Black Space, and talking to the game's PR manager, he informed me that the engine was built from scratch, so it's not a fork of their previous engine that powers their MMO, and this engine was built with the express purpose of powering single-player open-world games that can run on a console. I'll talk about different aspects of the visuals as I go, but in this moment, three things really stood out to me. Number one was foliage density. I mean, you can see it here, and there's a lot of it. Number two, foliage reactivity, because damn if it isn't all moving in the galing wind, with things like fireflies and floating leaves adding further texture to the setting. Finally, there's the darkness and the lighting, and there's a better showcase for this later on, but this is a game where darkness is actually dark, and the effect of torchlight is highly localized. That makes the darkness really matter in a way that it does in few other games. Digital Foundry compared it to Dragon's Dogma, which I think is an extremely useful comparison for many reasons that we'll come back to later. Anyway, eventually you start chatting with people, and this is when two of the game's biggest strengths reveal themselves: voice acting and tone. I think this cutscene really showcases it well.
We're just gonna sit here sipping this pig swill. I'd rather eat a blood-based bleed.
Hey! You looking to get some manners beaten into you? You better fucking pick that up!
Or what, Jan? You gonna make me?
Fine, that's enough.
Forget it.
So a few things here. Number one, pretty good voice acting, huh? They're clearly going for a very Western fantasy vibe, and they've got voice actors that feel like they've been pulled straight out of Game of Thrones. And then there's the tone. It's earnest, self-serious, adult, nothing remotely PG here. The scene really pulled me in, to be honest, and most of the scenes I saw throughout my playthrough maintained a similar tone, at least when we're on the ground. Soon after that, we're attacked, and Cliff and his Greymane clansmen are in a fight for survival. It's here that I got the first taste of combat, and the basics are all there. It's light attacks, heavy attacks, special attacks using button combos, dodges, parries, etc. It's a real power fantasy in the sense that the enemies you're fighting don't pose too much of a threat on their own, but there's a lot of them, and they ragdoll around when you hit them with a heavy attack, and it's all built towards letting you deal damage rather than constantly being on the defensive. The combat model evolves significantly later in the game, but from what I can tell, it's less about enemies becoming more dangerous and more about you becoming more dangerous, with really advanced inputs and combos that allow you to do some pretty crazy stuff. Anyway, despite Cliff's best efforts, the battle doesn't exactly go his way.
What's that? Got something to say? Give Gian my regards.
So Cliff is KIA. That's the end of him, right? Oh, what? He suddenly awakens in a set of weird stone ruins? Guess there's more to his story. This is the first time you encounter the Abyss architecture, which is essentially the Sky Isle stuff from Tears of the Kingdom. It's in the sky, and it looks the same, and it's basically all puzzles, but we'll talk more about it later. For now, we start to learn about traversal in the game, and it's here that we meet one of the first curious quirks in the control scheme. You can just press square to jump in this game like any other, but holding the L1 button when your weapon is sheathed brings up a cursor that you can use to precisely target something in the game world. If you're using it in town, you might use it to target an item on a table you want to pick up, or a specific NPC you want to chat to. Here, you can use it to precisely target where you want Cliff to jump. So this is the first example of Crimson Desert doing something and me thinking to myself, did you need to do that? Like, if the movement and jumping models were naturally more sticky and guided you to likely destinations automatically, you wouldn't need this. And that might be an upgrade because I found this targeting thing to be extremely unreliable in later sections where I was targeting areas that were clearly jumpable, but the game just wouldn't let me do it. Anyway, after that we do some climbing. You can see the stamina bar here, very Breath of the Wild in the way that it functions. Soon after that, we get to another curious system, and an example of how confusing some of the puzzle feedback is. I approach this area, and to progress, I need to reflect light at this stone above the door. I get a prompt explaining to me that I have to press L1 and R1 to start the reflection process, and then I need to press L1 to actually focus the beam. And it's like, why couldn't I have just continued to hold L1 and R1? Why did I need another button press? And so I kind of struggled with this because I was still holding R1 while pressing L1 again, and that didn't work. Eventually I figured it out and I could see the stone change color, but the door wasn't opening. And I was like, what am I doing wrong here? Eventually the Pearl Abyss person standing over my shoulder took pity on me, and he's like, no, you need to leave it on the stone door for longer, which was unclear because the game wasn't really giving me a lot of visual feedback that that's what I needed to do. And look, I know this sounds really nitpicky, I get it, for sure, but it is an example of something that continued to happen throughout my playthrough, an unclear control scheme in support of an unclear game system that's being used to solve an unclear puzzle. And not for nothing, but I didn't end up using this light reflection thing in any other puzzle solving throughout the rest of my 6-hour playthrough, so I gotta wonder how essential this game system is, a question we will definitely come back to about other things later on. I then get introduced to my lantern, which is an essential piece of kit because it not only lights up spaces, but shining it on certain things will reveal some of their secrets, like the flow of power through these cables, or later on the location of important pickup items. After that, I'm then mysteriously reconstituted and returned to the land of the living.
Greymane? Lost in thought again? Why don't we go inside?
In this new setting, we can appreciate Crimson Desert's beauty in a whole new light. Literally, daylight. You can see the draw distances allowing a clear view of the town in the background. You can see the glorious, vibrant use of color. You can see the vegetation remains as thick and as responsive as before, and you can see how much detail exists in man-made structures like this cabin and its surrounding camp. It's crazy how good this game looks, honestly, and it only got more impressive as we pressed on, because soon after that we got on horseback, and I mean, just take a look at this.
The view from the bridge is absolutely breathtaking. It'd be a shame to just hurry past. Let's take it slow. We deserve a little serenity every now and again.
Just unbelievable. And it doesn't stop there, because right after we get this glorious showcase at scale, we then find ourselves in a little township, and we're able to see how much detail is poured into shopping stalls and cobbled streets and alleyways and all of the NPCs roaming around. It's rich with detail, but it also feels alive as NPCs are actually moving and chatting as opposed to just standing there mute. My goal at this point is to reach the tavern, and it's here that Crimson Desert starts doing that thing it continued to do throughout the rest of my playthrough, updating quest objectives without characters or things in the game telling me, so the only way I can progress is by following the quest text and minimap. Like here I reach the tavern like I've been told to do, and I'm looking around for who I should talk to, and I'm going upstairs and I'm talking to every NPC. Turns out the game updated my objective, and now I needed to go outside the tavern to talk to a beggar on the street. It's not like there was someone in the tavern being like, hey, I saw someone outside who wanted to talk to you, go check that out. There were no dialogue clues leading me to the next step, just the quest prompt itself updating, and that's actually how most of the quest progression worked during my playthrough. So I didn't really feel like I was responding to people or game events, I was more just responding to the changes in my minimap and my quest log. One thing I really enjoyed after this was walking around town, because my map was full of question marks, and the only way I could fill them in was to actually go to the place and talk to the person there. That revealed that the question mark was actually a butcher, or an alchemist, or a weapons dealer, and I liked the fact that I had to visit these places, rather than just have them all immediately appear on my map. After that was a sort of confusing objective that involved equipping a broom in my tool slot and then standing on top of a chimney so I could sweep it out for some folks. They rewarded me with some new clothes which I could then use to get into the local castle, since my old rags apparently weren't classy enough.
You don't look like a bad sort.
Everything seems to be in order.
Stay out of trouble, you hear?
Earlier, the beggar had given me a key, and I then needed to find a door in the castle to use it on. Again, no NPC I spoke to told me that, It was just the quest updating itself. So I did that. I found the door, and after a quick trip through a portal, I found myself here. We're now back in the abyss, which ironically is in the sky, and I unlocked my first fast travel point. And then it's time for a new gameplay system, the Axiom Force. By holding down L3, I can shoot out this hand thing, which I can then use to push or pull things. But this thing is quite tricky to use because it's very physics-based, in that if you're not standing in the right spot when you try to pull or push something, it won't work. So it's a combination of positioning your character and grappling at the right point, and then using the correct input commands to get it to do what you want it to do. I'm sure eventually this will be second nature, but at first it's definitely tricky. After this, more confusion. I then need to use the same grapple to rotate a thing, but the control scheme for the grapple has completely changed, where before I was using the triggers, it's now using the D-pad, and the way the device tells me that I've aligned it correctly is really subtle. True story, I got stuck on this and a developer came over to kind of help me out, but then he got confused on it as well, and he actually had to call over someone else to help him do it, so I wasn't alone in that moment. Anyway, after that, there's this really weird, lengthy platforming sequence where you just jump along floating blocks, and then you get to this bit where you have to wait for a full minute for this floating block to do a loop. Literally 60 seconds of you just standing there with no way at all to speed it up. And when you do that, there's another floating block after that that makes you do the exact same thing. I'm like, what is going on here? Am I doing something wrong? So after that, more floating blocks and then a puzzle. I first needed to grab and move some blocks, and then I had to move this metal cover onto something. And when I do that, it's only kind of floating in front of where it needs to go. And then I learned a new ability called Force Palm, which I used to smack it into place. The puzzle then tells me to activate the Abyss power supply without telling me what that is, and I'm super confused at this point because I can see something that looks like a door that's not powered up, but when I force palm it, nothing happens. So I'm running around for ages trying to figure this out, like looking at everything, jumping on things, force punching stuff. Eventually, a developer comes up to me and he's like, oh, you have to climb onto that wall and then force palm the panel when you're hanging on it. And I'm like, how the fuck would I have known to do that? I spoke to other people playing at lunch and we're all like, yo, they need to fix that shit because your average player is not getting through that puzzle without a trip to YouTube. After that, I met this witch lady who is definitely rocking some very classically inspired getup, and then seemingly out of nowhere, she's like,
Here, take these wings.
a little confused but willing to go with it, Cliff takes a leap of faith. Now, I am unsure why the wings I've been given look like the Venom symbiote, but that's a point I think I'll come back to later when I talk about this game's approach to visual cohesion. For now, we do just have to acknowledge and respect the fact that I really am falling from a great height, and I really can see very, very far, and there's a huge amount of ground detail retained while all of this is happening. Like, come on, that's just incredible. Zelda did the same sort of thing, but with nowhere near this level of graphical fidelity. This is a genuine first, and this black space engine of theirs should probably be renamed Black Magic. On the way to my next objective, some bandits on the road want to get frisky, and I'm only too happy to oblige. This happens quite a bit during my playthrough, so I'm going to guess that the map is regularly dotted with ne'er-do-wells to keep things interesting.
Get on with it then!
After that, we've got a good old-fashioned outpost clearing. Some bandits have taken hold of the local keep, and by killing them all, I liberate it for the region. A recent gameplay showcase revealed that there are many such outposts to liberate throughout your playthrough. It's here I learn I can light the tip of an arrow to use it to burn things, and after that, the game starts to take a very confusing turn. So, this game does this thing where you can view memories of events in the past, but it does it in the strangest way imaginable. Every other game just asks you to walk up to a thing and click on it and then the memory plays. But here it involves this weird helmet thing which you need to equip by opening a radial menu, switching to a new tab in that radial menu, pressing R2 to equip the helmet while mousing over it. You then need to close and reopen the same radial menu to select the helmet, and that will then push you to a new menu where the complete collection of memories, both obtained and unobtained, is visible, and they're divided into certain menus and submenus, and man, it's a total mess in there, and it only gets worse later on because more menu categories get added, and later on you'll also need to shine your lamp on potential memories to unlock the full memory, and man, it's bad. It's easily the most egregious example of Crimson Desert piling on needless complexity, with the result being a belabored control scheme, unnecessary menus, and a confusing experience. Like, it really could have just had a clickable thing, trigger a cutscene, and nothing would have been lost. Right after that, I unlocked this force lift thingy, which I didn't get to use too much of during the demo, and after that, we settle into the major quest line, which is actually just a bunch of side quest feeling activities. One dude has had his cow stolen and he wants you to find it. Spoiler alert, bandits took it. Another dude has his cart or something stolen. Spoiler alert, bandits took it. Finally, a little boy lost his precious sheep and he wants you to find it. Spoiler alert, the sheep just wandered off. Each of these objectives sounds very mundane, but the explanation for them is anything but. Fully voiced cutscenes featuring grief-stricken characters, the voice actors really working to make you care about that lost heifer.
My home has been blasted to splinters, bits here and there. And then bandits took every last one of my cows.
If I was to guess, I think this is tugging at the same chords as something like The Witcher or Kingdom Come, games where the drudgery of peasant life matters to the people living in it. It's not particularly gripping storytelling at this point, but I think it's doing the job of building the world and building the story slowly, rather than just immediately thrusting you into these world-saving stakes. By the way, 2 out of the 3 of these quests also involved this weird memory helmet thing, and one of them was even more confusing because I didn't even realize I'd picked up or activated something that would let me see a new memory, so again, I found myself quite confused. And this is where that part of the demo ended, and like I said at the top, it was overall pretty rough. Because you're being introduced to so many new things, and because the puzzles you're solving aren't always clear, it does result in a lot of stop and start, where it feels like your fun is constantly being interrupted. Pile onto that some game systems that feel a little unnecessary, and a fairly ho-hum set of opening chapters to the main quest, and I would say that Crimson Desert does not open strongly. But to be perfectly honest with you, I really don't care all that much because this would not be the first game to have a slow, awkward start. Some games are just like that, and given the ambition of Crimson Desert, I don't begrudge it some awkwardness as it gets going. It certainly helped that I was able to skip over to the game's end state after that, where I got to see a fuller picture of what to expect. There were a number of activities I did here, which sadly I don't have footage for since capture wasn't permitted for these sections, so I'll just have to show you other B-roll and trailer footage. But yeah, the first thing I did was a boss battle. It was set in a large, knee-high puddle in the middle of a battlefield, and the boss could command water, so he kept erupting geysers beneath me that would immediately fling me like 100 meters into the air. He looked fantastic, he had a broad moveset, it was just a cool boss fight. I will say though that the combat in Crimson Desert is very much about you get out what you put in. As a character action style action game, it's less about difficulty and more about your own expression. I was able to sort of button mash my way through this boss using only a fraction of what the combat sandbox has to offer, but I was also watching the developers play and they could do some truly crazy things. All the stuff you've seen in the trailers and gameplay showcases, it's all there. I really am looking forward to getting to grips with this combat system, which by the way is quite flexible in the sense that there's multiple weapons and different martial arts styles attached to them, and a whole skill tree that unlocks new abilities and combos. After that, I did a really lengthy puzzle sequence that started on the ground and involved using my grapple to route power through a massive tower that activated a lift that took me all the way to the Sky Isles, where I had to do even more puzzles that involved powering up ancient relics. That eventually led me to a fantastic boss fight called the Crow Father or Crow something. Anyway, he was the crow dude who attacked with a murder of crows at his back, and he looked sick as hell. The encounter happened on multiple platforms within the Sky Isle section, and it was quite tricky to be honest, much more challenging than the water boss actually. Did another boss after that was equally ferocious, a very Nordic coded dude in command of a stronghold. A lot of destruction in that encounter actually, something I haven't spoken about yet. A lot of the structures in your environment are fully destructible, and they will splinter and smash as you hurl goons into them, or if you pick them up using your force grab ability and smash them onto an opponent's head. The Black Space engine is surprisingly reactive, a real accomplishment given that it doesn't sacrifice any visual fidelity to get there. After that, I was in the free roam section, and this is where I could seamlessly switch to other characters, each with their own fighting styles, and I'm told they also have their own storylines, though they appear to be more focused on side content than the main storyline. This is where I could summon that dragon and fly around wherever I like. I immediately started doing strafing runs on a nearby farm, blowing up buildings which earned me a criminal status, which I didn't know existed to that point. I was also able to control this mech suit thing, which you see in the trailers, which is kind of like a walking tank in that it moves slowly and it's mainly focused on firing artillery. Absolutely no idea how this fits into the main game, but it is undeniably cool.
Well now, don't you smell fragrant?
And so that was my play session, and I walk away from it, like I said, really excited, though I do have a few question marks that I'm watching closely. Obviously the control scheme and game systems, I assume I'll eventually get to the point where they feel intuitive and all the systems make sense, but I also leave room for the possibility that this many game systems means that many of them aren't as refined as they should be. The story is feeling a little uneven so far, so hopefully it finds some rhythm soon. I do think the mishmash of various visual elements is quite jarring, and I'm wondering if that eventually makes sense more than it does now. You've got a traditional medieval setting, but also Tears of the Kingdom style Sky Isles architecture. You've got NPCs dressed like Gandalf the White, but also mechanized elements that feel steampunk. You've got this Venom symbiote wings thing. You've got a loading sequence that feels like Assassin's Creed, and it's all just thrown together. At least that's how it feels right now, and I'm hoping it finds more congruence as the game goes on. But I want to finish by coming back to that Dragon's Dogma comparison from before. I kind of get the feeling that Crimson Desert is going to be playing in that same space. It's not a sandbox game, but it does feel very sandbox-led, where the game systems and the lands you're journeying through are the stars of the show. I'm really excited to journey through this landscape, seeing what adventures befall me, because I suspect those things, the off-the-beaten-track moments, are going to be where this game really shines. I spoke to 2 developers who refused to give me a definitive playtime for the game, but they both guessed it was about 60 hours for an average playthrough, with many more hours after that for people who are looking to do absolutely everything on offer. We've clearly got a big adventure ahead of us when it drops on March 19th. I don't think I'll have a review up at that time since I'm going to be away at GDC, but I do plan to circle back to it when I'm home, so do look forward to a full review a little later in the month. For now, thanks for watching, and I'll see you real soon. Bye-bye. Very excited to be shouting out the sponsor of this video, our longest running and most supportive partner, Squarespace. Last year I got word that Squarespace was signing for a 7th consecutive year, helping the Skill Up team do what we do. Squarespace was actually the very first long-term sponsor I secured, and they've been with me ever since. Their support gave me the confidence to go full-time on YouTube, so it's very little exaggeration to say that I wouldn't be here without them, or at the very least, their support gave me a huge shove towards where I am today. Squarespace are helping me live my dream career, and to be honest, that's kind of what they do, because their website creation tools make it super easy for anyone to spin up a new business, scale up existing businesses, develop a portfolio of work, or just build community. The days of having to hire an expensive team of web developers to make your website are over. With Squarespace, you can build a professional looking website in just minutes. Just start by selecting one of their templates, customize it using their intuitive tools, and then begin uploading your content, be it published articles, the inventory of stuff you're selling, your art portfolio, whatever. Squarespace websites all support e-commerce, making it easy to begin doing business, either by selling products or by organizing appointments if you're providing a service. They also support multiple payment solutions, as well as detailed analytics so you can see how customers are finding you and what they're doing when they spend time on your site. They're also ready for this next AI-enabled era, with AI-powered tools that make website design and copywriting even easier, and their SEO tools have been refreshed to ensure that your site appears in AI-powered searches and chatbot responses. There's so much more that Squarespace offers, so if you'd like to check it out for yourself, you can visit squarespace.com to try it for free, and if you want to get serious, visit squarespace.com/skillup to get 10% off your purchase of a website or a domain name. A big thanks to Squarespace for their 7 years of support, and a big thanks to you for watching this video.